There are all kinds of unbelievable stories in the NFL every single week. But is it just me, or is the craziest thing that's happened so far the fact that we are into week 16 of the regular season? There are only 3 regular season weeks remaining, and that seems impossible. But week 15 went a little better for us than the prior week. We were 9-7, bringing our overall total to 140-84. I want to see if we can manage to go sub 100 losses, at least in the regular season. We've got a shot at it with 16 left here in the last 3 weeks. So I want to do a quick recap, and it's not even so much a recap of the prior week because there are no more bye weeks. We have a full slate of 16 games. So basically, looking at the NFL broadly, and especially as we move into the last couple of weeks and towards the playoffs, in my opinion, the 49ers look like the best team not only in the NFC, but in the NFL. I think most of us saw that coming, even going back to last year. They were looking like a juggernaut before the Brock Purdy injury in the NFC Championship game. But with the Eagles faltering, with the Cowboys faltering, they really look like the team to beat in the NFC. The Bills, though, in the AFC, might be playing the best football in that conference. Maybe other than the Ravens, I think you could make an argument either way. The last couple of weeks, the Bills look legit. And who would have thought that a couple of weeks back? The Chiefs with their offensive struggles, whether it's Kadarius Toney lining up off sides or having another ball go through his hands and get picked off, Travis Kelce's dropping touchdowns, and the Dolphins did play good this week, but the prior week, that loss to the Titans, I think you can very easily make an argument the Bills are the most dangerous team in the AFC, and I think we may do this the next couple of weeks as our kind of recap, looking at the teams that maybe are the most dangerous going forward. We're moving into basically, at least for like wildcard teams, more or less playoff atmosphere type football, even in these last couple of weeks of the regular season. So lots of huge matchups with major playoff implications this week. The playoff race is shaking up to be really fun to watch over the holiday, and it starts with Thursday Night Football tonight. The current 9 seed Saints taking on your current 7 seed Rams. Both teams are coming off wins last week. The Saints were able to handle Tommy DeVito and the Giants. The game was close for a little while there, but never felt all that close. And the Rams held off the Commanders at the end. Jacoby Brissett actually was in there trying to lead a furious comeback at the very end of the game. So the Rams, with the Packers faltering, have found themselves currently in the last wildcard slot, and the Saints are only a half game out of first place in the NFC South. Both are 7-7. This game is huge. And the thing that's always tough about games like this, played in LA particularly, is the aspect of home field advantage, and especially in December and nearly into January now, home field can really start to matter a little bit more. There isn't as big a home field advantage, at least crowd-wise, for the LA teams. They just don't have that fan base, at least not yet. Despite that, I think the teams in a way are relatively similar. They've been up and down this year. They've won some games that maybe you didn't expect. They've certainly lost some games they shouldn't have lost. But ultimately, when it comes down to a matchup like this, typically I'm going to go with the better quarterback and the better coach. The Rams have both in Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. I mentioned it last week, and the Saints were able to pull off the win, but the vibes in New Orleans haven't been good. Whatever's going on between Derek Carr and his teammates, there's just something not right there. And I think the Rams are trending in the right direction. They're making a big bounce back after literally the worst title defense for any team ever last year. I think they might find their way into the playoffs. I'm picking them to win this game on Thursday night, kicking off Week 16 with the W. For the second week in a row, the Steelers are playing on a Saturday. The Bengals are traveling to Pittsburgh for the second matchup in this series for 2023. Jake Browning has been playing extremely well. As Joe Burrow went out with the wrist injury, looked like the Bengals season was over, and suddenly they've played themselves into a current wildcard slot. The Steelers are in a freefall. They've lost to the Cardinals, the Patriots, and now the Colts, all since Kenny Pickett got hurt. There's a chance that Kenny Pickett plays, but as of now, Mason Rudolph is slated to get the start. A part of me wants to pick the Steelers because it just feels like there's a chance for a headline, Rudolph's Christmas Miracle or something like that. You could almost feel something like that happening. But here's the problem. DeMonte Casey has been suspended for the rest of the season. Minkah Fitzpatrick's out. Keanu Neal's out. The Steelers have no safeties, and you're against a team that, while with Jake Browning throws underneath a lot more than Joe Burrow, You're trying to defend Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I just think 1 or 12 too many times. Those receivers are going to get behind the defense. I hate to pick the Bengals here. It pains me, but I'm going to pick the Bengals to win. Even though it's in Pittsburgh, December football, nothing good has been happening in Pittsburgh as of late, and the lack of safeties just concerns me too much, especially if Kenny Pickett can't go. The team really seems to rally around him. Whether or not they rally around a change with Mason Rudolph, I don't know, but I'm picking the Bengals to continue this hot streak they've had going. The lack of a back end on the secondary just concerns me too much. Picking the Bengals to continue their win streak. Now, had this been a regular week, our recap would have spent at least 2 minutes talking about the absolute shellacking on Thursday Night Football last week. The Raiders dished out to the Chargers 63-21, and it seems without Justin Herbert there may be no hope for the rest of the year. There may have been little hope with him there, and of course Brandon Staley's been fired, Tom Telesco's been fired. The Chargers are probably not in a good spot right now, and we did talk about the Bills potentially playing the best football in the AFC right now. Even though this game is in LA as well, I just don't think it bodes well for the Chargers. The Bills are on a mission. They can basically win out and have a real shot at winning the AFC East. Dolphins have a couple of tough matchups coming up. They drop one of those and the Bills win out. Bills are your AFC East champs. So I'm picking the Bills to win this one. They're on a mission right now, and I have no faith in, making a coaching change being that big a difference for the Chargers, especially not against a team that is playing as well in December as the Bills. Got the Bills going on the road and getting a win. Not for playoff reasons, but this one could be interesting. Kicking off our early slate on Sunday, Commanders visiting the Jets. So despite the benching, Sam Howell is going to remain the starting quarterback for the Commanders, and this was the game that reportedly Aaron Rodgers was targeting to return with. Last report I have seen, he's still not been fully medically cleared to play, and it's looking like it's going to be a couple more weeks, so in all likelihood, Rodgers won't be playing in the 2023 season. Neither of these teams really have any hopes of the playoffs. The Jets, I believe, are already eliminated. The Commanders may still be in it, but just barely. And this is a tough one to pick, but I'm going to go with the Commanders maybe having a little bit of, what Miami was able to do this Jets defense, and it's kind of piggybacking on the fact that Rodgers looks like he's just not going to play this year. I think the Jets are officially a defeated football team, a deflated football team. I'm not saying they're going to quit on Robert Saleh or anything like that, but I don't know how that defense comes out and just continues to play well when their offense does nothing. And I think their offense will struggle against the Commanders' defense. I think Sam Howell and all those weapons, he's just going to be able to move the ball enough on the Jets. Now, he has a propensity for turnovers, and 1 or 2 interceptions may change the tide here, but I think Eric Bieniemy is going to have him ready. I've got the Commanders going on the road and getting the win here. I just think the Jets for 2023 are finished, and they're looking at 2024. The Lions are headed on the road to take on the Vikings, one of 2 matchups in these final 3 weeks that is going to be pivotal for both teams' playoff hopes. The Lions still lead the NFC North and are coming off a much-needed win last week over the Broncos, an absolute thumping, by the way, of the Broncos on Saturday. The Vikings were very close in that Bengals game. In fact, they were up big at the end, and the Bengals were able to come back, and they drove to midfield. I think they had a 2nd and 1 and had 3 tush-push attempts in a row, turned it over on downs, and Jake Browning leads the Bengals down, and they kick a game-winning field goal. I don't have enough trust in Nick Mullins, even though the Vikings defense has played so well, and I do think they may have something for Jared Goff. I think they'll probably get a couple of turnovers, but that high-powered Lions offense, I think the Vikings offense being not high-powered right now, they're going to give the Lions offense enough possessions that at some point, even with the exotic blitzes and stuff Flores is going to throw at Jared Goff, they're going to score too many points. The Lions, despite kind of slipping there for a couple of weeks, they can see the playoffs, they can see this division crown. They win this one, they've all but got it. Got the Lions getting the win on the road and pretty much wrapping up the division on Christmas Eve. Fitting, wrapping up, imagine that. One of the most intriguing matchups of Sunday is the Browns visiting the Texans. Now, as of this moment, CJ Stroud is still in concussion protocol. I'm expecting him to play. I'm going to pick this game as if he's going to play. Rarely these days do guys miss multiple games, especially after a singular concussion in a season. That said, I'm not sure that CJ Stroud playing changes my pick here. Even though Joe Flacco has been turning the ball over more than you'd like, he's been playing really well for the Browns. He's been moving the ball pretty consistently for that Browns offense, and their defense has kept them in games, is won games for them, and even though they almost gave up a game-winning Hail Mary to the Bears last week, they were able to do just enough. The 4th and 1 stop, by the way, maybe was the biggest play of the game. Really good defenses like the Jets have been able to slow down CJ Stroud's historic rookie pace. And again, assuming he plays. Ooh, now I gotta think about this because it's on the road. Assuming he plays, there's definitely a chance, I think a good chance, the Browns defense can slow him down. That said, the Browns defense on the road has been nowhere near what they've been at home. They're giving up, I think, over 30 points a game. It has not been at all the same team. I hate to pick against CJ Stroud because this game is a must-win for the Texans. They've got the Titans and the Colts coming up yet. And they're only a half game out of first place in the AFC South. That said, I think I'm going to pick the Browns. Nico Collins being hurt, Tank Dell being hurt, the lack of weapons hurts against this good Browns secondary. I'm going to pick the Browns on the road. They're rolling, and I'd love to see CJ Stroud in the playoffs this year. He's been so much fun to watch. This game could be the nail in the coffin, especially with a tightly contested wildcard race, but I'm going to go with the Browns. They've just looked the better team for the last couple of weeks, especially with the injury concerns. I got to go with the Browns as much as that defense on the road concerns me. Moving to the Packers visiting the Panthers. Now, I think 3 weeks ago this would have been the easiest choice ever. And I've already said I'm not picking the Panthers the rest of the year, despite the fact that they did win last week. Last second field goal to beat the Falcons. The Packers have dropped 2 straight, and they haven't looked nearly as good. And keep in mind, even though the Panthers are a 2-win team, their defense is pretty good. That said, it's really not the Packers' offense that has been the problem. Sure, Jordan Love's had up and downs, but for the most part, he's actually been able to move the ball pretty decently these last couple of weeks. Against the Giants, he led a go-ahead drive, which the Packers defense immediately squandered and let the Giants go right down the field. And last week against the Buccaneers, there was a bit of a shootout for a while there, but ultimately, the Packers defense gives up too many points. I think against the Panthers offense that's struggling, even though the Packers defense has not been good, they're going to be able to get it together enough, and I expect this to be a low-scoring game, somewhere in the realm of 17-14, maybe 20-17, something like that. But the Packers are still competing at least for a playoff spot. They're not currently in it, but one slip up by the Rams and one win, they can be back in it. They got to win this one. I think they will on Christmas Eve. I'm going to pick the Packers and Jordan Love to bounce back a little bit here. Play a little bit of a cleaner game against a good defense. I mentioned it last week. Matt LaFleur was 16-1 in December. He was 16-0 2 weeks ago. Now he's 16-2. I think he stops that little December losing skid against a team that just isn't very good this year and an interim head coach already. I'm going to go with the Packers. This seems like the right pick, and I've already said I'm not picking the Panthers the rest of the year, so I'm not sure why we need to talk it through, but that would be my reasoning for it. The Seahawks, coming off a huge win on Monday Night Football over the Eagles with Drew Lock at the helm, are heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans, who may be without Will Levis. He suffered an ankle injury in that overtime heartbreaking loss to the Texans last week, and his status is entirely in doubt as of now. Modern football 2023, head coaches generally aren't going to tell you, unless it's a very obvious injury where the quarterback's going to be out. They'll make teams prepare for both, so tough to pick this one. I really don't know if Levis is going to play or not, and I do think that one matters. It feels like definitely a Seahawks game. If it's not Levis, it could be back and forth if it is. Now, the Seahawks quarterback situation is also kind of in question. Geno Smith was active against the Eagles, but Drew Lock got the start. Pete Carroll has said that Geno Smith is their quarterback when healthy, so given another week, I'm expecting Geno to make the start here, but I really don't know. This could go a multitude of different directions. Ultimately, though, we've kind of seen the Titans at their best, and we've seen the Titans, when not at their best, just they can't really compete with some of the better teams. If they play at their best, like they did 2 weeks ago against the Dolphins, they can beat anybody. ultimately here, given the injury concerns at quarterback, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. Their weapons on offense, be it Metcalf, JSN, Lockett, Noah Fant there, if Kenneth Walker's healthy, and he seems to be healthier than he's been in a while, let alone the fact they've got Zach Charbonnet back there as well, there's so much to defend, and the Titans' defense, while good, isn't exactly great. Any game the Titans play, for the most part, is going to end up being a low-scoring, kind of ugly game. That's the type of game they try to play. But I think the Seahawks can blow this one open. If the Titans end up going with Tannehill or Malik Willis, I think they have no chance. If Levis plays, definitely a shot at it. But I'm going to give the Seahawks this one on the road. They are yet another one, just outside the playoffs looking in. If they can win this one, they still have a shot at it. Picking the Seahawks, riding that wave of momentum with the win over the Eagles last week on Monday Night Football to beat the Titans on Sunday. And the final game on Sunday's early slate, Colts visiting the Falcons. So one thing to keep in mind, Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator for the Titans, therefore he's pretty familiar with the Colts, maybe not so familiar with the Shane Steichen-led Colts. As I mentioned, the Falcons lost to the Panthers last week, so that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. This does feel like one of those games the Falcons win for no reason, and I don't think I'm going to pick them, but I'm just going to say that right now. I could see that being the outcome. The Colts have been playing good football, though, and I think the longer Gardner Minshew is at the helm here, the better he plays. And while the Falcons' defense is good, Shane Steichen just continues to have answers for whatever defense they're going against. I mean, whether it's the Browns, whether it's the Steelers, they put up a lot of points, and I think they're going to continue to do that here against the Falcons. We now have yet another quarterback change in Atlanta. They're going back to Taylor Heinicke, which, maybe helps things out because Desmond Ridder and his red zone turnovers have become a bit of a trend. I don't know how good that is, though, yet again, switching up your quarterback. I just think, against a team that's currently in a wild card spot and a Falcons team that just a couple of weeks ago was leading the NFC South, dropped 2 straight, I just kind of think they're in trouble right now, and I think the Colts are rolling. I still think there's a chance the Falcons win this for no reason. There is that Heinicke effect that he's had on the Commanders in the past and even the Falcons this year. But I think the Colts make 1 or 2 more plays. That'll be the difference in the game. I don't like that I'm picking a lot of road teams in December. That doesn't make me feel good. But in all of these situations, I just feel like the better team, especially the later we get into the year, I just got to go with the better coaching staff and the better quarterback. In this one, I think it's Shane Steichen and Gardner Minshew picking the Colts on the road to round out the early slate of games. And into the mid-afternoon slate we go with a big battle of 2 teams in Florida, the Jags visiting the Buccaneers. Both these teams are currently leading their division by a half game, so neither can afford to lose. The Jags have dropped 3 straight, and the Buccaneers have actually won 2 straight, and suddenly their offense seems to have figured it out. It's almost as if being a bad running team and trying to be a team that runs the ball all the time isn't a good idea. They've opened up the offense. Baker Mayfield looks rejuvenated. He is playing really well, whether it's throwing to Evans, Godwin, or anyone in between. That offense could pose problems for the Jags defense. We've talked about it at different points throughout this year. The Jags run defense is pretty good. The Jags pass defense can be had especially by better passing teams. Those weapons that I just mentioned for the Buccaneers, and even Rachaad White out of the backfield, that could be a serious problem for the Jags. And like I said, they're kind of in that free-falling mode. I think this one's going to be fairly high-scoring. And maybe for once I'm going to pick the home team. I got to think, at some stage the Jags' losing streak is going to halt. Maybe it is this week. But there's just been too many concerns. They're kind of playing like they were in September and October. Red zone turnovers, missed field goals by McManus. The turnover on the scramble by Trevor Lawrence. He just dropped the ball, and it's become all too frequent for this Jags team. I think an opportunistic Buccaneers defense, they're going to find a way to turn over the Jags offense at least 1 or 2 times. I'm picking the Bucs in this one. It could absolutely go either way, but I think they've been playing better football as of late, and I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. A huge matchup in this mid-afternoon window, by the way, is the Cowboys visiting the Dolphins. The Cowboys are coming off a major loss to the Bills, a loss that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, It was a 31-10 shellacking, and it wasn't Josh Allen's right arm. It was James Cook. Now, both through the run game and in the pass game, but particularly the run game, seeing the Cowboys defense get run on like that kind of gives me concern, but the Dolphins run game isn't the same as the Bills run game. The Dolphins run game is a lot of stretch plays, a lot of outside stuff. And the Dolphins, while they can do that really well against a lot of teams, the Cowboys defense is more built on speed. So I don't think the run game in this one is going to be nearly as big a factor, at least not the stretch run game. Maybe they can find a way to run it up the middle, but that's just not who the Dolphins are. Now, whether or not Tyreek Hill plays in this game is a big deal, and my other concern is, especially it seems on the road, the Cowboys can be a really undisciplined team. Offensive penalties, pre-snap penalties, all sorts of things like that. That's one thing that I think could derail them. I do think, though, after an embarrassing loss like that to the Bills, when they could have taken over the NFC East, of course, they didn't know the Eagles were going to lose to the Seahawks on Monday night, but had they won that game, they'd be in first place in the driver's seat for the NFC East. I think that loss refocuses them, and I kind of think this matchup benefits the Cowboys. They've got a good secondary. I do think Deron Bland could get burned kind of like he did against the Seahawks a couple of weeks back, but in the end, I think the Cowboys offense is going to rebound. This game shouldn't be nearly as bad of conditions as the game in Buffalo, and I think I'm picking the Cowboys on the road. Second straight week playing against an AFC East contender on the road. I think this time they get it right. I'm going with Dallas, and again, I'm picking a road team. That's starting to concern me. I do like the Dolphins a lot in this one, but some teams as of late have kind of shown they can slow down the Dolphins a bit more, and I just don't think the Dolphins can exploit the one major hole in Dallas' defense. So I'm going with Dallas to rebound in this one. I don't love it, but without any kind of update on Tyreek Hill's status, and I should mention I'm recording this video a couple of days earlier than normal because I'm traveling for the holidays, so I haven't seen any reports for Tyreek Hill. I gotta go with the Cowboys. The injury and missing last week entirely does make me wonder what's going to happen this week. I think I'm just going to pick Dallas on the road, go with my gut, and that's what my gut's telling me. Two of the NFL's oldest franchises do battle this week, the Cardinals visiting the Bears. This game means nothing for the playoffs whatsoever, but the Bears all of a sudden have looked pretty decent. They gave the Browns all they could handle and, quite frankly, probably should have won that game. The Cardinals have also been improved, but maybe not as much as the Bears have been, and I think the Bears' offense is actually going to pose problems for this Cardinals defense. Justin Fields has shown a little more ability to throw. If his receivers could catch the ball, that would be great. But even, with a couple of drops, I think they're going to move the ball against the Cardinals. Now, I do think Kyler Murray's going to have something to say. I think this game could be higher scoring maybe than you would expect, but for once, I'm going to pick the home team, going with the Bears over the Cardinals in this one. It's again kind of a reflection of the last couple of weeks and how the teams have looked. The Bears appear to be a team on the rise. The Cardinals, they had that big win over the Steelers, and they've kind of slumped back down to where they were prior. I like the Bears in this one. I think Justin Fields is essentially playing for his job. I think Matt Eberflus is coaching for his job. And the way they've been playing right now, they may both retain them in 2024. If they can win this one, that goes a long way to both of them and their job security. I've got the Bears getting the win over the Cardinals for the last game in the mid-afternoon slate. So moving to Sunday Night Football on Christmas Eve, a rematch of the 2015 AFC Championship game, the Patriots visiting the Broncos. Now, I'm going to say it right off the bat, I'm going to pick this game to have the same result as the AFC Championship game from 8 years ago. Of course, that was Peyton Manning's last year. Not his greatest performances, but the Broncos did get the win in that game, and I've got the Broncos getting the win here. I do think the Patriots defense will pose problems for Russell Wilson and that offense. We saw last week the Lions shut them down for a considerable part of the game. They were able to get some scores in the second half, but it just simply wasn't enough. But we know who the Patriots are, and they're not going to run away with this one. And I think if the game even stays semi-close, ultimately, Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton has been playing really well as of late, Javonte Williams, there's just too many good pieces on that offense to let the Patriots win this game. They are yet another one. It is darn near every team. They're very much alive in the playoff race. They gotta win this one if they want any hopes, especially after dropping that game to the Lions. And I think they'll rebound. Belichick versus Sean Payton, good coaching matchup. Quarterback matchup, Bailey Zappi versus Russell Wilson, maybe not as intriguing. But ultimately, the Broncos are the better team. They've got the better offense and two good defenses. I just think that benefits the Broncos a little bit more, especially at home. Got the Broncos winning this one and rounding out Christmas Eve. And there are 3 games on Christmas Day, that being Monday, the first of which is the Raiders visiting the Chiefs at 1 Eastern. So this is the first of 3, air quotes, easier games for the Chiefs here to wrap up the season. 3 games they should win, and probably 3 games I'll pick them to win in each of these situations. The Raiders are coming off easily the best game, probably of the last 15 years anyway for them. 63-21 over the division rival Chargers, albeit against backup quarterback Easton Stick, but a divisional game, backup quarterback or not, usually shouldn't be a 42-point blowout. That said, the Chiefs' offensive woes still concern me, and the Raiders typically play the Chiefs tough, and last time, I believe they were up 14-0 before the Chiefs just stormed back and won that game fairly handily. This one's in Arrowhead, and I don't expect the Raiders to be able to jump out to an early lead. Maybe a bit of a letdown after that huge game last week. I've got the Chiefs winning this one fairly handily. We're moving towards the playoffs, and we know Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are at their best this time of year. I don't think they let the Raiders even have a chance in this one. Got the Chiefs getting the win. The Giants are headed on the road to take on the Eagles, who are now losers of 3 straight. And I do think, maybe lucky here, that their last 3 games are a little bit easier. They get the Giants twice in the last 3 weeks, and the Cardinals in between. Last year, the Giants had no chance in any of the 3 games. They played the Eagles twice in the regular season and once in the playoffs. The Eagles' offense is not the same as they were last year, but they're the better team. They outclassed the Giants, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a similar story. The Giants couldn't stop the RPO last year at all. It certainly doesn't help them that they've traded Leonard Williams to Seattle, and I think the Eagles are going to be able to do it again. I think they can basically RPO their way up and down the field against them, even without Shane Steichen. I think this is a bit of a get-right game for them. I think this is a bit of a take-out-your-frustration game for them, and especially in a primetime slot, Christmas Day, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, I don't think the Giants have a shot. Maybe close to the beginning, but Eagles are going to pull away in this one. Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, this is a get-right game if I've ever seen it. Eagles win big. And finally, Christmas Day, Monday Night Football, 8:15 Eastern kickoff. Game of the week, in my opinion, Ravens at the 49ers. We can say potentially the best team in the AFC, at least the way they've been playing in the last couple of weeks. Talked about that at the beginning of the video. Versus, I think, undoubtedly, the best team in the NFC. This is, of course, a matchup of the Super Bowl from 2012. That was the Joe Flacco elite playoff run and Super Bowl MVP year. I don't think this is going to have quite the same outcome. Both teams have been playing really, really well, but I think the way the Ravens play kind of goes into the 49ers' hands. The Niners are going to be able to move the ball, maybe not as well as they do against other teams. The Ravens' defense has been playing really well, but the Ravens don't want to play in high-scoring shootouts. They want to be able to run the ball, they want to be able to control the clock, and if the 49ers can get anything going on offense, they make the Ravens a little bit one-dimensional, and that loss of Keaton Mitchell, by the way, with the ACL tear is not going to help them. I think the Niners get a bit of a lead, maybe even just a 10-0 lead or a 10-3 lead. Ravens get one-dimensional. That passing game is not as good as they want it to be with Todd Monken there. I got the 49ers winning at home to round out Week 16, and outside of the recap, had this video done in just under a half hour. So let's recap all 16 picks. I've got the Rams over the Saints on Thursday Night Football tonight, Bengals over the Steelers, Bills over the Chargers, Commanders beating the Jets, got the Lions over the Vikings, Browns over the Texans, Packers rebounding against the Panthers, got the Seahawks over the Titans, Colts beating the Falcons, Buccaneers over the Jags, Cowboys beating the Dolphins, Bears over the Cardinals, Broncos beating the Patriots, and for our Christmas games, Chiefs over the Raiders, Eagles over the Giants, and 49ers over the Ravens. Just hit the 30-minute mark. I think that is plenty for this video. Can we have a good enough week to have a shot at sub 100 losses for the regular season? We shall find out. Enjoy the games this week. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know who you think. Let's actually do 2 games, Cowboys Dolphins and Ravens Niners. Who you got winning those? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.